Today's guest is Steve. I actually just met him, but I think we're going to become really good friends really fast. And he started his own solo consultancy around 2016, focusing more on UX strategy, UI design, a lot of brand development, obviously art direction, working with some great clients. Some of you may have heard these: Amazon, Spotify. And now he's working as a VP for creative strategy full-time at a company called Metro Retro. And they were originally a client back in 2019. So I'm excited to hear that story as well. So, Steve, tell me how you are today. I think we so often jump into these, and I hope at this point our viewers realize that this podcast is a little bit more low key than a webinar. It's not exactly a webinar, but we do drop so many golden nuggets. But how are you today? And you said you were you had quite a bit of to-do list to get done. So tell me how you are, and then tell me what's the first thing you're gonna do after this call.
I'm good, man. It's where are we now? Tuesday? Already feels like it's been a long week.
We're on Tuesday, yeah.
We're on Tuesday, yeah. Already feels like it's been a long week, but that's just because we've got a bunch of stuff going on in Metro Retro, so we're super busy. We're in a very high growth cycle at the moment.
Nice.
So small team, startup, sort of edging into the scale up side of things. So a lot of hats worn by everybody, doing a ton of
for
work.
sure.
So other than that, I'm all good. Really happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I hope that our conversation today at least gives some of your listeners some nuggets, as you said, to take away, and they learn something from it. That's the whole point of it. I've watched a couple of your episodes, and they're really insightful. So
Nice.
I'm hoping to be able to contribute to that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So I think what I want to focus on for us and for everyone watching or listening is sort of this all-encompassing creative journey, because your kind of elongated bio has gone through a lot of different stages. You've got a lot of different work that you've done. And I think that along the journey, there are certain points that users will come to use. I say users like Kittl users, but artists, designers, everybody, where they either get stuck or they're just not sure if they're supposed to stay where they are for however long. They don't know when to move on. They don't know if they should go freelance. They don't know if they should join a full-time company like you have done now. And you've actually done that later in the journey. We'll just talk about the journey, where a lot of people, I think, start out working in a agency or in a client-based work environment, and then they go to develop their own thing. They develop their own freelance, whatever. And so I want to talk about that. And I want to start in the days where you were working and growing, and then this period of time where you decided to start your own thing. You start your own company. And I think what's most interesting about that is how you were able to scale that to actually work with these big name brands. So maybe tell me a little bit about what you were doing prior to starting your own gig, and then we'll get into, okay, how did we run this thing?
Yeah, I mean, when you asked for that, supplier short bio, I think I went over the word count limit very quickly, because even thinking back, I was like, damn, when did this all start? And how many times have I been in and out of freelance and in an agency?
Oh,
and back
right.
again?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started freelance straight out of university, which is always scary. Because
Okay.
I sort of, I moved from South Africa. If you didn't notice, I don't have an English accent, but so I moved from South Africa, came to the UK, didn't really know much about the creative industry here, was just starting out, freelance for a while. So I was doing club flyers, I was doing illustrations for a pram company, I was doing technical illustrations for them. Then I ended up at this toy packaging company, and then slowly progressed from these small freelance gigs to slightly bigger work, then a full-time job somewhere. And then I got my first break in an agency in 2010, pretty much based off the illustration work, because that was the time when you were still doing Facebook games. I don't know if you remember. You might be too young to remember those.
Man,
but
no. They were getting you with the ads all over the place. They wanted you to spend money, man.
Exactly, exactly. We were some of like the nicer ones, but that's just because we were like brand adjacent ones. So
Okay, right.
we
Oh,
worked with
yes,
brands
yes.
who wanted to like create a little game so that there was a reason to visit their Facebook page and do all of that. And so that was my like first break into an agency. It was like a full service design agency in London. And they did absolutely everything, right? So they did like brand development, they did websites, they did experiential stuff where then you would have like a microsite activation going alongside that. We did like multimedia installations. So I spent a good 6 years sort of growing up through various different roles at this agency.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so it's like started as an illustrator, then became more of a general graphic designer, learned more
Okay.
stuff about like typography and typesetting
Okay.
and like proper layout structures and the proper way and proper like design principles to lay out and communicate through your sort of visuals. And then from there went up to web designer, then moved on from web design to be more on the strategic side. So over the course of 6 years, went from junior illustrator to the studio lead. And
Wow.
by the time I got to that point, that was like, your question was like, when do you decide to move on?
Yes.
I had gotten to the point where nobody could teach me. And not to be
Hmm,
arrogant, like not as a case of like, I know everything, I can't be taught. I found myself, I was no longer getting challenged. Like my opinion
interesting.
ended up being like the opinion that everyone said, okay, we'll do that. And for me, that was kind of an
Ah,
indicator of like,
there's
I
no
need a bit
growth.
more fear in
Yeah.
my life. I need more challenges. And
Mm.
so by that point, I had the confidence after like a few friends, like a few close friends had said like, just go for it. Try
Wow,
the
okay.
consulting route, like try the contracting route. And
Yeah, and what
uh,
exactly, like, when you say so that word actually caught me off guard, and I do wanna go back to a couple of points in the before, but when
yeah.
you say consultancy, like, does that mean that you were, like, not doing as much design work, or, like, you were just, like, what does that word mean to you, I guess, the consultant part?
That's where for me, it was like you turn into a one-man show or a one-person show, right? So
Okay,
you
okay.
are then doing the pitching, the selling, the conceptualizing, the strategy behind the work that's gonna be done. Then you're also doing the delivery of it, right? So it's like
Wow,
full
okay, so that's
concept
a
to delivery.
lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, but that's why I think, it's like after those years learning in the agency and seeing how things are done and absorbing information from other people. And I think like now, for maybe people who are starting out who don't have the benefit of being able to like have that much agency experience, that's where the online resources come in. That's where like the
Yes,
YouTube channels, all of the
yes.
available information that's out there, all of the talks that people give, like none of that really existed when I was starting out. You couldn't
Wow.
go
Yeah,
on
well,
and
true,
find
yeah, you're right,
somebody
yeah,
who
yeah.
had created like a really in-depth course,
Yes.
or
There
who
was no
has like
Skillshare, I guess.
yeah, or like exactly, or like breaking down like a pitch strategy.
Mm.
Like I remember going like, "Oh, how do I make a pitch deck? Like what goes into a pitch deck?" But like you learn that
Yes.
over time when working in an agency environment, and now you can learn it online. But so
Yeah,
when I flipped over to the consultancy route, like that was all on me. It was okay,
big
so
challenge.
I'm gonna be a freelancer. So first thing you do is you like try and hook up with a couple of recruiters so that they can try and
Oh,
source stuff
okay.
for you. But when you're using recruiters, you're kind of just like waiting, right?
Yeah.
So what I was also doing, I was just like keeping an eye on things and reaching out to people that I'd worked with before, reaching out to people that knew me, that I knew that they were in sort of like an adjacent industry that could potentially introduce me to someone. So networking was definitely the primary thing. And again, this was before going to
LinkedIn?
like events. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't before LinkedIn. I'm not that old.
Oh, okay.
This is before
Yeah,
there
but
were so
LinkedIn
many
was
like
in its very, like,
early
primal,
days.
like, it was like, "Okay, I have a connection. What am I
Yeah.
supposed to do now?"
Yeah. It wasn't a social network, right? It's way more of a social network now. Like it used to just be like a business card more than anything else.
Yes, yes, now you actually can show work and stuff.
Yeah, people are using it for like content creation, and they're doing all sorts of stuff. And like there's a phrase that I'm not a massive fan of, which is thought leader. But there's a lot of thought leaders on LinkedIn now who are pushing out a lot
Yeah,
of content there. Anyway,
true.
we're digressing slightly.
Anyway,
Um,
yeah.
And so, yeah, I was relying on my network, and that's
Okay.
why, like, you know, I learned a lesson a long time ago is that, like, never burn a bridge. The creative
Yes.
industry is very small. When you if you get pushed out of it, it's very, very small. You find out everybody knows everybody. So you got to keep good relationships throughout your career. And those relationships, and those connections that I'd made and just people that I knew, is what allowed me to sort of ease into that whole contracting and consulting world. And
Yeah.
then once you get one, you start to use that. And obviously, having a personal portfolio and a website is a no-brainer. You kinda need that. I spent a
Mm,
lot of
mm,
time
mm.
putting mine together and choosing what I wanted to focus on because as
Okay,
you
okay.
saw from the bio stuff, like, I'd done a lot of work, a lot of different work, and trying to narrow that down to, like, 6 projects or something like that, and then choosing the exact line that I wanted to go after, that was tricky. That took me a while to get right. And I think that's what's also important when you're going out there and trying to find work is, like, being honest with yourself with the type of work that you wanna do.
Mm,
And make sure
yeah.
that you're saying, like, "I'm available to do XYZ, and that's what I actually really wanna do." If you try and shoot too wide, then you might end up going down a route that you're not happy with. You'll get burnt out very quickly because the whole consulting thing is very lonely,
Mm,
because you
yeah,
are
it is.
doing it all by yourself. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think for me, it was a case of I'd gotten to the end of that 6-year, adventure at an agency. I wanted a new
yeah.
challenge, and then I went out there looking for the type of work that was really enjoying in the last couple of years, and I found that that work was more strategic.
Mm,
So,
okay.
I could still do the visual design stuff and, the branding and the brand development and extension and web design and just, sort of general graphics. But I
Okay.
found that the value from experience was more about being able to quickly tell a client what not to do.
Mm,
Which
yes,
is, I
yeah,
think, unfortunately,
language.
one of those things that you can't learn quickly. You kinda need
Mm,
to make all of those mistakes, but that's why all these online resources are so great because they
yeah.
can teach you. Like, I think I can't remember the name of the guy that you interviewed that I watched. The guy gave himself 30 days to do
Oh,
something.
Edward. Edward, yeah, it's a
Edward.
good friend of mine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's like, that chat that you had with him was really cool. And, he
Yeah,
was
'cause
he
he
was
also
talking
he
a
just
lot.
he just recently, left his full-time job to become full-time
Yeah.
freelance, and so he was trying to figure out how he's gonna, effectively make that work outside of money, but just, like, it's something that he's wanted to do,
Yeah.
but his job was amazing, there was
Yeah.
there's no issues, he loved his team, whatever, it's just, like, it's time to, like you said, either be challenged or do your own thing, so, yeah, you're right, it's very hard decision to make.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and that's it, right? Like, the guys that I worked with and the team that I worked with, we were all really good friends, we were having a good
Mm,
time. Anybody, I think, would have been happy to have that job, but I think something inside of you, when you have the desire to do more, it just kind of pushes you to go like, "Okay, I've gotta go and try something different. Could try and get
mm.
out there
So,
and then
I
see
I
what I
have
can do."
yeah, I have several, questions forward from that time period about how you got into a couple of different iterations of design, but I wanna actually
Yeah,
go back for just a second
yeah,
to something you said about being an illustrator first, and I
yeah.
think that, you know, again, our audience is pretty diverse, we probably don't have as many specific illustrators, we may have some letterers that come and they get into
Mhm.
design because you already kinda have that entry point through typography, but I wanna know, like, the transition from being an illustrator, you're working on these, awesome graphics, these promo flyers, whatever they were, and
Yeah,
then now kind of morphing that into, you said, more general graphic design.
yeah,
I like that you said general, because it's like graphic design is so far reaching, but there are kind
yeah.
of pockets of design. Where did your, like, desire or training come from to start this illustration stuff, and why did you decide, "Okay, I need to take this and now learn this other thing," which I'm deciding is called graphic design, and then now from there, obviously, you've done a whole lot of other stuff, but we'll get to that in a second. I wanna talk about the illustration skills into graphic design. Can you talk about that time period?
Yeah, definitely. So, illustration started out massive comic book fan, right? So when I was going into study, I started studying really late. I only went to university at 23 years old.
Okay, okay.
And the only reason I went to university is because I sort of like discovered there's this whole industry around visual design, around illustration, like commercial illustration. And there's this like this whole world that I wasn't aware of when I finished high school. Um, and so then when I started looking at places to study, I wanted to be home. So I wanted to go back to Cape Town. And I found a university that did like graphic design as the
Interesting.
course with
Yeah,
a
that's cool.
specialization in illustration. So
Okay,
it's like, sweet,
understood. So
this is
you
what I
were
want to do.
learning other things. Yeah, you were learning other things as well.
Yeah. And so you were doing like illustration was your main thing. And I went into that because like as a kid, I'd always drawn. I loved drawing, loved comic books. Had a, I hate to use the word talent because anything can be learned. So everything is a
Sure.
skill, right? But I
Yeah,
had
but
an
you had a
affinity.
proclivity towards that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I enjoyed it. And, if you want to get good at something, you have to dedicate time to it. And I didn't mind dedicating time to that.
Got it.
And
Got it.
so then I went in, I did this illustration or design slash illustration 3 years at this university in Cape Town. And during the course of that, we had really good lecturers. And the guy who taught me illustration is actually quite a sort of well known international children's book illustrator. And
Okay.
one of the things that he really instilled is that, like, similar to design, illustration is it's communication, right? You're communicating a message, a story, a feeling, whatever it is, through the way that you apply your brush strokes or the way that you color something or
Yes.
whatever it is. So taking like pure illustration, which is just whatever you want it to be, and then applying that to commercial usage was interesting to me. And
Mm.
so the illustration stuff just naturally bled into my design work because I could sort of sketch concepts quite quickly for whatever the design challenge was. I could
Right.
communicate effectively with a couple of lines because I was an illustrator.
Mm.
And then when I took that further, like I came over here, it's like, oh, okay, people wanted a club flyer that like resembles this or implies this feeling or the packaging stuff that I did. It's like the ability to quickly draft something helped me get design concepts across much faster.
Yeah, for
So
sure. You
even
sketch
now, like,
faster. Yeah.
yeah, even now that I don't illustrate that much anymore, but um, it helps me to communicate more effectively with like other stakeholders on projects that I work on because I can sit there next to somebody with a pen and paper and I can draw out something. Like drawing is a skill that I think, or is something that I think all creative people, all designers should dedicate a little bit of time to because if you can quickly draft an idea down, you can communicate something in the shortest amount of time possible. You're going to get rid of a lot of those bad ideas quickly.
Mm.
And also, when you're dealing with customers or clients like I used to, which is like on a call, bring up a whiteboarding tool, sketch some stuff with them, get them involved in the process, you start to build trust by being able to quickly express yourself. Whereas if I
Yeah.
had to go to someone, okay, cool, yeah, I'm going to go away and design this thing, and then I'm going to go make a bunch of wireframes and this and that, you're excluding them from the process. So I find that like
Yeah.
just having those hand skills to be able to illustrate has always been helpful. And I still do it now with the product that I'm working on.
Okay.
Um, we have illustrated templates. It's a whiteboarding tool, and we have illustrated templates. So I still get to illustrate now because I do the characters and the things that go into those templates that we use.
Mm, okay.
So that's a
Got it.
nice
Got it.
little, a touch back to it. I still get to use this guy. He doesn't just sit here and take up space on my desk.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so that
I
is nice.
think we have a funny post coming out soon. Well, it'll definitely be out, I think, by the time this podcast is out, but we're calling it the graphic design starter pack.
Yeah,
And
Cintiq is one of them.
on it is a Wacom or whatever, and it just
Yeah,
says, "You promised yourself you'd learn to draw," or something.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and it just, like, sits there. I never bought one because I am an illustrator, I do draw, I use
yeah.
Procreate and
I love Procreate.
Fresco and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and I just, I can mirror it, I guess, to the computer. Now you don't I mean, I guess the Wacom is fine, but you can, like, use your iPad for
Yeah, you
whatever
use
else.
anything now. Like this
Yeah.
was a very luxurious gift to myself once the
Yeah, that's a nice
consultancy
one.
started. Once the consultancy started to do well, then I was like, I'm gonna treat myself because I've been like lusting after one of these for years. So it's like that's why it keeps pride of place on my desk, even though I've maybe used it like once a week. But yeah,
Yeah,
getting back
yeah,
to your question though, like the transition from Illustrator to design uh, it was out of general interest too. Like, so I got hired
mm,
as an illustrator to work at that agency because they needed somebody to do stuff for like mobile games and the Facebook games, and they just needed someone in the team makeup who could draw and who could illustrate and who could make characters and
correct.
do all this
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
right? But then as I was exposed to graphic design and web design and motion design and all of these other things, my interest took me further down that way. And then I made like a, because you have to be like honest with yourself, right? In your career too. It's like there were people who started at the same time as me as illustrators, and their work was just like up here, and mine
Sure.
was kind of here. But my
Mm,
sort of like conceptual thinking and problem solving ability started to overtake my ability to illustrate. And I was like, I'm going
understood.
to lean into this because I'm getting a lot of joy out of the problem solving side of design, which
Yes,
is, I mean,
yes.
most of what we do, right? It's problem solving.
100%.
And so it's like
Yeah.
I lent into that and I moved away from a career of pure illustration, but it's still in my back pocket when I need it for whatever project I'm working on, right? But I no longer like sort of tout myself as an illustrator.
Okay, okay, yes. And now I wanna talk a little bit about moving past that. You have a lot more experience throughout your consultancy and working with different clients, doing a lot of different parts of what we'll just call the design bundle. So obviously you've got the illustration, which is cool, which is mostly just, you can illustrate, just illustrate and it not be for graphic design. You have
Yeah.
general graphic design, which makes up a lot of things. But now under your belt, you also have uh, web and UX design. And
Yeah.
so I recently, so where we talked a little bit earlier about how to learn, and there wasn't as much resources back then for you, but now there's YouTube, there's everything. I started learning through, I think his name at the time was Adobe Dan, but it's Bring Your Own Laptop. That fella,
Yeah, yeah.
he's great. He's great. I learned way back whenever those videos were up. I started learning different programs, how to do different stuff. And the reason I bring him up is because he actually just did a video, and I've been thinking about like maybe reacting to it.
Yeah.
But the idea that he's saying in that video is that if you're thinking about being a graphic designer, I suggest you switch to being a web or UX designer for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Or
Most of them
product.
being
Product is the more
yeah,
popular title
or
as well
product,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, most first and foremost is everybody's developing something, and if you have the skills
Yeah.
to conceptualize and design it, then you could
Yeah.
go that way. I would argue that they are not mutually exclusive, but they are different. But
Mhm.
I bring that up just as a little precursor because I want to hear your thoughts on transitioning into web and UX and how that experience has been for you in the progression from I was focusing on just illustration, then I
Yeah.
got into doing much more graphic design. Now I'm doing these other things, but I
Yes.
also compact them. So yeah, like it's a
Yeah.
a whole
I
big
I
box that is.
I think firstly, it's like the downfall of most curious creative people is we can't help ourselves that we just want to know what's around the
Mm,
corner, and like you want to investigate these other things because you want to have a deeper understanding. I think the
okay.
hard part for creatives is like when to stop, when to just like stay in your lane, because it's super tricky to go like, no, I've learned enough, I'm just going to focus on this one thing. For me it was again, those couple of years at that agency, it was being exposed to this stuff because we had in our team, it was, I think there was about 5 designers, and everybody sort of had their thing, right? That they were good at. And you'd kind of like look over and say, "Oh, that's interesting. Like, what's going on over there? What are you doing?" And I was in the illustration and in the graphic design, you were kind of getting given the work from the web designer to make pretty. Like this is the
Yes.
structure, this is the plan. Can you color it in for us? Essentially. And there's I have a lot of admiration for people who are really good graphic and really good UI designers because it is difficult, man, to keep concepts fresh
Yeah.
and to not fall into the trap of just designing the same thing that everybody else has designed because your sort of visual library is so oversaturated from stuff that you've
Oh,
seen.
yeah.
So a lot of
Yeah.
respect for like good visual designers. But I was just getting more and more interested in like I was saying, that problem solving side of things. Like, how do I move someone through this experience to get to either the result that they want or the result that the business that I'm working for wants? How
Yes.
do I make sure that the cognitive jump from like doing X thing to doing Y thing is as seamless as possible? So that was like
Yeah.
the web design was like the the gateway drug to UX, right? Because web design was like, okay, now I have to think about devices and responsiveness and all of this and context of when and where somebody's going to be looking at something. So now you've got to have that like first step of empathy to the end user.
Yeah.
And then that was super super interesting. And the agency, we were exposed to a lot of web design projects, either through just like we're doing a rebranding, we want a fresh website, or we are doing this experiential thing, we want a microsite to go with it. You know, we would get like those sort of like light web design projects. Then
A
we started
light,
to get,
yeah, web
yeah,
design
light
light.
ones.
Yeah.
You know, it's like just
Yeah.
it's a
Little
page or
baby
two.
one.
It's not too deep. Yeah, a baby
Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
But then you start getting into like the big juicy ones, which is like, well, we have a complex like product that we need to talk about. Like I'm talking about like a physical product, not like a software product, right? But we've got like this.
Okay.
We're introducing this new thing to the market. There's a bunch of different components to it. There's a lot of choices for the end user. How do we sell that in the most effective way and make sure that
Yes.
they choose blah blah blah, all that stuff. So then you start getting exposed to like the UX side of things and user
Yep.
experience and the sort of information architecture, as it was called back in the day, and looking at the user maps, user journeys, all of these things.
Yep.
And that really interested me. Like that was like the next logical step for
Really?
me was like, okay,
Mm.
the puzzle is getting more complex. Now
Okay.
I'm like
Okay.
way more engaged. So I think
Yeah.
my career was just like, if the thing is more difficult, I'm more interested in it. And not
Interesting.
to, again, not to sound like, oh my god, I'm so good. Look at me, you know, crushing briefs left, right, and center. It's not that. It's just like I find my personality. I need to like struggle with something a little bit to like feel like I'm making progress with it and get to like
Mm.
a good result. So the bigger
Yeah.
the challenge, the more interesting I find it. Then
Yeah,
that
I
you know
think
that comes all the way through to
yeah.
skipping out a big chunk of consultancy. Comes all the way through to now like working with software startups.
Right, right.
It's like I love that. Like it's probably I'm in my happiest place now, and I don't think I'll progress from here until technology changes massively, you know?
Okay.
The
Yeah,
one
that
thing I have been looking at on the out of the corner of my eye is, XR design, like extended reality
XR.
stuff.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Like
yeah, but that's for another
AR/XR, yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Talk to me
yeah,
in
yeah.
6 years when I've got some experience in that.
Yeah, I think it's so funny how you laid out the progression because it's very similar to how I also started in UX. I mean, I would say that I'm the reverse. I actually started in UX and
Ah,
like really learned that hard
mm,
first. And now I think what I would consider, well, I'm teaching design, but what I
yeah,
mostly do now, I would just consider a variety of graphic design. I still do some web projects on the side if they're baby sites. But when you were
yeah,
saying like you start with a microsite, that's exactly what I did. I remember I was like I got hired as a just a creative specialist on the UX
yeah,
team at an agency, and I was just focused on wireframes, and I would get a side client, and I would do these like baby 5-page websites, refresh
yeah.
for somebody that needed 5 page. So then, I would work up to a 10-pager. Then I would work up
Yeah.
to something that has a portal. Okay, so then you have to think about this is what it looks like when
Dashboards.
you're not signed in. This is what it looks like when you're
Yeah,
signed in, all the way up to what, you said, like, the big juicy one, which I also had. The biggest project I worked before I left the agency was for a client that sells customizable cars, and
oh my god, yeah.
they wanted to completely redo their, um, build your own car
Yeah, the
system. So
configuration
we
thing? Oh my god.
yeah, yeah, a configurator, so you could choose
Yeah.
between trim levels, seat interior, extra packages, all terrain, whatever, transmissions, you could do all of it, and so I remember I had this XD file with, like, 100 stages for just this one part of this panel with all of
Yeah.
the drop downs, and just the developers being like, "This is
Please
going to
stop.
This is going to take months to do.
Yeah.
That was a crazy project, and so it's just funny the way that you laid it out because you are right. I mean, you do I think maybe that's one of the pitfalls, which people get into is, like, they learn something and they wanna get right into that heavy hitter, expensive project, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, you may not be as prepared. I certainly wouldn't have been. I would have freaked out if what but
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at the work that I did for that project versus that first five-page website I did in Squarespace, like,
Yeah.
nowhere close to ready, and so I think that progression is really, really helpful to hear from you and me and others is like, "No,
Yeah.
this is how it has to work." You gotta, like, be small and grind, you know?
Oh, totally. You can't just you can't jump in, and I think that's why, to go off on another tangent here, I think in my, response to your invitation, filling out the form, I was like, I have a bit of maybe not a popular opinion on boot camps
Oh, yeah,
because
right, I remember reading
yeah,
that, yeah.
yeah, so, like, I've my worry is because I've, like, looked at a lot of, junior designers who are applying for work, and when I've tried to hire people as well, so
They
people
have
who've
it on their
applied to
application.
agencies that I've worked at and, like, looking at portfolios and that, and these boot camps which, like, sell the dream of, like, learn UX in 3 months.
Yeah,
I was like,
yep,
"Sure, you could
100%.
in 3 months, you could learn all of the topics you have to go and research,
But you haven't done
but
any work.
you haven't done any work, and what you've done is you've given me the same portfolio that 1,000 other people have done because they're trying to
Mhm.
compress what is like um just an understanding of how things work into a portfolio, right? So it's like
Yeah,
user
sure.
experience design, like when you actually start doing it properly in an agency that has a proper mature structure, like, then you start to realize, oh, there's researchers. Oh, there's the UI people. Oh, there's motion people. Oh, there's like the UX strategists. It's like all these layers. And you start to understand like how deep it is. Like your XD file, that was like a one component with 1,000 variants.
Yeah.
Like you can't learn that in 3 months. So you might go, okay, I'm gonna make a form, and the form has
Yeah,
to have like an input,
case
and it has
field,
to have an
yeah.
input that has it like returns an error response, and it has to have an input that has succeeded. It's like,
Yep.
no, 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 no. There's a lot more to it than just those three states, right?
Sure,
So I
yeah.
think, yeah, like understanding the scale of what you're getting into, but that should also, I think, for anybody starting out, that should be an exciting thing, not an off-putting thing, right?
Yeah,
So
I think so. I have a similar idea as well on boot camps and when they're helpful and when they're not. You know, for example, I do have friends that have become immensely talented from coding boot camps. So
yeah,
they dabbled a little bit, but then they went to like, you know, University of whatever's 3-month boot camp, like you said,
yeah,
and then they got a job and they are crushing it.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas
I think
like I think
it's context, right? It's like
context, yeah, it's
I
different.
think it's
Yeah.
the context, yeah, because like developers and like I don't claim to know everything about being a developer. I've worked with a lot, and
Yeah.
there is so much involved in that. But I think the hardest thing with being a developer is just like breaking through that initial barrier of understanding. It's like, okay, so this is what CSS is. This is what JavaScript is. This is what PHP is. Like just learning all the acronyms is probably like step one,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
understanding what they do. So I think if you go for like a 3-month crash course on that, then
Yeah.
all it does is it gives you the base level knowledge and your curiosity will take you further. Similarly with
Yes.
design bootcamps. I think design bootcamps should be more about like this is an introduction to a whole wide world,
Mm.
and you should figure out what you enjoy or what you think is going to be your path to like stability or success or whatever it is that you're going for, because like your
Yes.
aim is just as important as what you're being taught, and then you use that as like a jumping off point. It's the thing that annoys me about them is that they sell them as like, once you finish this 3 months, you're
You're
gonna
gonna
know
get a job.
everything and go get
Yeah.
a job,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
just saying like it's you're gonna set people up for disappointment, and you're gonna sort of take away some of the enjoyment from an industry that you and I both really enjoy and a lot of other people enjoy. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming the people who listen to your podcast just wanna know more about to pique their interest more, to maybe get exposed to like, "Oh, that's a cool resource. I should think about that." Blah, blah,
To
blah,
get educated, yes.
you get
Yeah.
educated, but all of these points are just like step 1,
Mhm,
and then you
mhm,
have to
mhm.
go and, like, look at people's
Do it.
work that you really like.
Yeah.
Find those, like, 4 or 5 YouTube channels that give like good value information.
Exactly.
Find a
Exactly.
couple of people online, couple of content creators who are like sharing great nuggets, but also like in a positive manner, not just kind of like content farms that are like espousing all of these unrealistic expectations, because it's hard, man. I think creative people are generally more sensitive, which is not an
Yeah,
issue,
true.
but I think creative people are generally more sensitive, and like it's easy to get overwhelmed when you see
Mhm.
like, oh my god, this guy has created so much. I'm never going to be able to do that.
Mm,
Whereas
mm,
I think people who've been in the industry for a while, and people like yourself who have a platform, you're doing the right thing by showing everybody like, you can go this way, or you can go this way, or you can go this
yes.
way. Here's a couple
Yes.
of tips to get you started. Like, here's some other resources to go look at. Like, enjoy it and go
Yeah,
do it.
100%.
But
100%.
don't overwhelm with like, oh, you need 1,000 followers before you can even consider yourself a creative. Like,
Yeah.
if you went to go
Yeah.
and find my Instagram page, you would see a total of I think 9 posts, all of the toys that were on my desk 10 years ago. That's how much social content I make.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to ask now about these big name clients. I think we've let people, I think
Yeah.
we've left people in the queue long enough. The suspense is building, and they heard Amazon or Spotify or whatever, and they're like, "Well, just tell me how you got that." So obviously, there's no golden ticket other than hard work. I think we figured that out when we talked to Ben Burns and Stephanie Owens. There's no secret
Yeah.
sauce other than hard work. But I think it would be helpful and practical to talk about how you were able to build yourself to the extent of getting a client like Amazon or Spotify and what that actually means. So maybe if you can talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So Amazon was direct, working with their creative department in the UK. Spotify was indirect, working with one of their creative suppliers in the UK, and I'll
Okay.
explain what that means. Um, so Amazon was, I think I'd been working as a consultant for maybe about a year by this point.
Okay.
And somebody contacted me saying that the team is growing. They're looking for people to come in, just to sort of like invigorate a couple of projects for a little while. The brief was super vague, and it was going to be like
This is for Amazon?
this is for
Amazon, you
Amazon,
said?
yeah, yeah,
Amazon,
for
okay.
Amazon. So they were just looking for people to bolster their team because they had a lot of work going on. So they were
Okay.
building up, and this was actually for an art director role, right?
Mm,
So this wasn't any of the other stuff. It wasn't the UX stuff. It wasn't the graphic design. It was like an art director role to work with their internal design agency, because that's what Amazon has, is like an internal design agency, and it's a weird system inside those walls. But yeah, so I got contacted. They were like, oh, they were looking for people. They've seen like your profile. They want to have a discussion. Let me tell you, like the process with working for them is 7 interviews long.
wow.
So it's a process, and you get interviewed by people who are not even connected to the design department,
Mm,
because it's a cultural fit thing, which I think it's
interesting.
a fairly American approach to things. So there's all these steps, all these
Sure.
interviews, and yeah, so obviously got through that process and then joined them initially. They just wanted somebody, and it was short. It was like 3 months. Come in.
Okay. Yep.
Um, we've got a bunch of projects going on that need some direction, and it was projects across everything. It was like, we need social content creation, and we need somebody to like define the direction for the social
Mm,
content.
okay.
We need somebody to work out the internal branding, so building a internal brand guidelines for Amazon Pay was one of them. We
Interesting.
need somebody
Okay.
to handle some of the seller fulfilled Prime, which I don't know if you know what that is. It's like it's a like a product that they offer to people who sell via Prime.
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they needed someone to develop the brand guidelines for seller fulfilled Prime, and create a brand book. Which by that point I hadn't done a brand book in a long time. And so,
Yeah.
like, being told we need like a 60-page document to outline like what photography can be used, how typography must be placed,
Mm,
what the color
yes.
variations are, etc., etc. So it was
Yes.
kind of like a general role. And I actually ended up like going into their offices. So I was working at them, you know, at their offices in London. And then so I did the first couple of months, and then they were like, "Oh, do you want to stay on? Because actually, we need someone to help with the film department
The film
as a
department.
storyboard." Yeah, so I joined the Amazon Motion team as a storyboarder.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's where that like random illustration skill comes in because I was doing illustrations to lay out what I wanted the social media content to look like,
Ah, got it.
and they're like, "Oh, what's that? You can draw?" And you
Yeah,
do
okay.
storyboards? I was like, "Yeah, I can do storyboards. I've done storyboards before." So then I got pulled over to storyboards. The long story short, I ended up spending a year there,
Oh, wow, okay.
ultimately. Yeah, so
So
just
what
sort
was
of like
happening with the consultancy thing? Were there still times you were doing other
the
client
evenings
stuff
and
or
weekends, Drew.
evening? Okay, yeah, no, that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
ask, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it couldn't stop, right? Because that's the other thing, like, you'll know from being a freelancer and a consultant, it's like, you have to, prepare for the winter, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yep, yep, yep.
there's gonna be big dips, in
Oh,
between
yeah.
work, so, like, I couldn't let anything drop off. But by this point, I had gotten myself into quite a good, like, referral network where a client that I
Mm,
finished a project with was referring me to another client, was referring me to another client. So I managed to do, like, 6 or so years purely on referrals,
that's amazing.
which we can get into just now about the whole, like, relationship building side of making a consultancy, I think, successful.
And where was the so you stayed at Amazon for a year. Did the
Stayed there for a
where did the
year.
Spotify
They
thing
try
come in?
they tried to well, that was the next gig. So
Okay, okay.
they tried to give me a full-time job at the end of the year, but by this point, I'd had a taste of freedom, right? So it's like, I'm good, thank you very much." Like, "It's been great, but I'm done." But, uh, an amazing experience, definitely. I think I still prefer working with smaller teams, smaller
For
companies
sure, for
who
sure.
are more ambitious and less restrained. But I
Mm,
think if anybody gets the opportunity to go and work in one of these, like, monolith
mega
businesses,
brands, yeah.
yeah, take it because it's good to see how that operates,
Okay.
and I think 9 times out of 10 people will say, like, "That's not for me." Because
Really? Okay.
yeah, yeah, and in my opinion, like, unless you are, like, really leading the charge on something, it's a machine, right? It's like you're
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the pieces in a machine, so maybe depending on which part of your career you're in, when you're starting, it would be amazing. You get exposed to, like, unlimited budgets, so whatever you
That
can
sounds fun.
dream, they can make, this sort of
Yeah.
thing. Uh, but I think, like, maybe as your career progresses, you prefer to get, like, down in the weeds a little bit more.
Mm.
So yeah, after I finished with those guys, I actually went back, and this is again, it was a case of returning to a previous customer. So one of the very first or contract jobs I had was at an audio agency who I was just doing like they needed to scale for a project, so they needed to bring someone else in.
Mhm, mhm.
I joined them for like a month-long project, and it was when I joined them, because I didn't know the connection to Spotify, like, when I spoke to them, because their name doesn't say Spotify or anything, but they were basically the UK partner for Spotify and
Oh,
all
okay.
of the experiential stuff that you see. So not wrapped, but kind of like wrapped, right? So when you
Oh,
see
okay,
like
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
an activation on Spotify that has to do with their API, and you go in, it's like, oh, what's my dog's favorite playlist, or what is my like Halloween personality, or generate a running playlist based on my user data or my usage. All of these little activations that you see popping up on Spotify, they were the studio who built that, and so I spent like a month with them. Then I went to Amazon, and then as Amazon wrapped, they were like, "Oh, can you come back?" Because again, another art direction role is like we
Mm,
want someone to run the internal design team.
okay.
Um, and until we make a full time hire, we're looking for somebody to help out with that and do the sort of concept development, the pitching, and then oversee the delivery of the product projects for
Got it.
Spotify.
Got it.
And so I spent another 6 months with them. The history repeated itself. They asked if I wanted a full-time job. I quickly jumped out of the window, ran down the street. uh, But I did manage to actually, recommend a guy that I'd worked with at a previous job for that one, and he spent, like, a happy 5 years there. So I know that at least
Wow.
yeah, I know that at least, I connected them with someone who gave them a lot of value and who had a good time
So,
there.
is there a Spotify office, like, in UK, and that's where you were working, or
No, it was like a little satellite office. I went to the one in New York. I
Okay.
went over there to go and work from there for a little bit, but that was just kind of like, meet the team. They were expanding on that side. So the UK agency also had one in New York City, and then they were expanding there, and then got to meet some of the like direct people with Spotify. But we were kind of dealing mostly with their brand partnership team because that's who would like commission them. It's like, okay, we want to do a Spotify project, and so like Jack Daniels or Nike or someone like that would come to the Spotify and say we want to do this, and then they would come to us, and then we'd work sort of
Got it. Okay.
in this
Okay,
little loop,
understood.
right? So, like,
Yeah.
exposed to a lot of cool brands, and, like, the nicest thing about working directly with brands like that, especially when it's via Spotify, is, like, the assets you get are so good.
No,
So
I bet.
you get all the best puzzle pieces, man, and then you just sit there and play, and put you don't have to make anything, like, everything gets provided, and so you just
Mm,
have to, like, think pure concept because a lot of the visuals are, like, done for you.
that sounds awesome.
So that was fun, and then obviously, you know, the benefit of that for me personally was people see this on your profile, and having brands like that, is kind of like a you passed a security check
Mm,
already because if they'll hire
yeah,
you, then you can be
yeah.
trusted, and that's why it's again one of those things. It's like the advice that I got very early on in my career is like stay at a place for a long time because it shows commitment and it's like it shows that you're
Mm,
trustworthy. The advice now is completely counter to that. Like,
hmm,
you know, 2 to 3 years at a place, maybe even less, depending on what you were there to do. If you were going in as like an IC, like an individual contributor, or whatever you were doing for, like just dragnet knowledge. Because
yeah.
I would rather hire someone now who's worked at 10 different places because all they've done is accumulate knowledge from 10 different shops, right? But if you've been
Yeah.
working at the same place for 20 years, you know how to do that place's stuff really well.
Right.
So I think for people starting out, like, don't be concerned if your CV has lots of experience on it. Like, it's a good thing.
Mm,
It's not a bad thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
makes
getting into those places, I think, yeah, you need to have the obviously the experience and the ability, but after I got into Amazon, I spoke to their global creative director, um, and he was telling me, like, why they actually offered me the job.
Mhm,
And the reason they offered me the job is everybody else who had gone in there for the interview process had just started, like, talking at them
hmm,
and talking at them about all of their stuff. And apparently, I was the first one who just sat down, asked them how they were doing, and asked them what
hmm,
they would like to know so that I know where to start speaking from.
yeah.
Which is a very basic thing, right? But I
Yeah,
think
it is.
yeah, but I think, a bit of advice for people going for their first or maybe their second interview or the job or something is, like, the person that's interviewing you is also just a human being. Like, try not to be nervous, try to be natural. You're gonna have to work with this person every day for the foreseeable if you get that job. So don't
Mm,
try and put on a persona. Like, I've found that, like, the relationships that I've made through my career is the reason that my career has been so long,
mm,
right? All of those years of consulting was literally just, "I worked with Steve, you should work with Steve,"
mm,
right? Because
yeah,
you are relatively easy to get along with. I say
right.
relatively because you have to challenge briefs sometimes.
Yeah,
But
we know this.
I think being trying to be a normal person will get you will get you a long way. And
Yeah,
don't try and oversell things, right? Just, you know, be yourself, be natural in your interactions with people, and then you don't have to worry about trying to maintain some facade that you created.
yeah, true, and so, I'm wondering if, that works once you kinda have the machine working, you know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
mentioned based on referrals, whatever, and I think something that was really interesting that I've not necessarily heard from other stories, which very well could have been a part of them, I just wasn't told to me, is that you started working with recruiters because,
Yeah.
to my understanding, recruiters are incentivized to help you find work because they get, you know, some sort of money back, obviously. So I just want to know for those that are in the stage, maybe just before your kind of 6-year excursion there. Is that something that you, having gone through that process, is that something you do recommend is like, "Hey, get a recruiter, you know, here's some guidelines for what I think," you know, is that something that you do suggest,
Oh,
from your experience?
totally, but make sure you connect with the right ones because there's
Okay,
there's a lot, right? There are a lot of, recruiters, or they've got other names now as well. Their job titles also change as much as the creative industry job titles. Talent acquisition, I think, is another one.
yeah,
But
yeah,
because they are individual businesses in themselves, right? As people, they are businesses because their whole thing is built on relationships with the clients that they are trying to fulfill the roles for. So they are
correct.
very active on platforms like LinkedIn. So when you're
Mhm,
looking for a recruiter, just go look at the types of posts that they're putting out there, right?
okay,
There are, a couple, particularly in the UK, that I have connected with over the years, that I have seen, like, their posts, and they are definitely ambassadors for the people that they are trying to place, right?
got it,
And there are
got it.
other ones who are definitely just ambassadors for the business they're trying to hire for. And there is a very fine difference there in terms of who's gonna have your back and who is more worried about the client's bottom line.
Yeah,
And it's simple things like not putting out the day rate, not posting the day rate, not posting like the actual detail, putting out very general descriptions of what they want done, not explaining like more about the company that they're hiring for. Even if they can't say who that company is, giving an outline of the type of work that they do or the type of
mm,
personality they're looking for. So you have to like approach reaching out to a recruiter the same way that you would like make a friend, right?
yeah,
Like there
okay,
has to be
okay,
a level of trust there. And also you have to understand that, like you said, they make their money from placing you in a
yeah,
position. They are more likely to want to talk to someone like me, unfortunately, because I have experience than somebody who's just starting out. But that doesn't mean you can't like not follow them on LinkedIn so that you can see
mhm,
their posts. If you send them a connection request and they ignore you, don't take that personally. They
mhm,
probably get thousands per day, right?
yeah, for sure.
And also, like when you're doing that sort of thing, if you are going to send a connection request to a recruiter, add a message.
Yeah,
Just introduce yourself a little bit, have a portfolio site, make it as easy as possible for them to understand what it is you want to do and what you're capable of doing.
yes,
Because
that's
even
true.
like I recently put out a post on LinkedIn looking for motion designers for a project that I'm working on at the minute. And I had like 250 plus people respond. Out
Mhm,
of the 250, only 60 sent a message.
really?
Out of the 60, only like 20 responded with their day rate and their show reels when I asked. And then it's just like the more I try to communicate, the shorter my list got, which was helpful
Yeah.
to me.
Oh, for
But
sure.
at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time, I was going like, surely this is like basic human
yeah.
decency.
You would think, but try hiring a video editor and it'll be,
Yeah,
the same.
exactly. I'm sure I go through the same thing. So I'm just thinking like if you're starting out, make sure that the people that you're trying to get to help you have as much information to help you as possible. Don't
Mhm.
bury things in a PDF file. Make a basic website. It's so easy to make a single page site now,
Yeah.
right?
You can
It's
make
so
one
e
with Notion now.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's going through that process is already good practice for anyone because you're gonna encounter problems that you have to solve, right?
Yeah.
And you're also gonna question yourself about personal brand. Like, do you have one? Do you need one? You're gonna have to like succinctly state what it is you want to do and what skill sets you have. So all of these are good practices anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they are recruiters are beneficial if you find the right one. Don't take
Yeah.
their lack of response personally because they're busy. I've got friends who run two brothers who run their own recruitment company for developers,
Mm.
and if everyone could be recruiters like them, I think the whole industry would be a better place. But that's
Mm,
like one in a million, right? And then
right.
I've got one of the best recruiters I ever worked with connected me with with a healthcare startup just because she thought that our personalities would match.
Right, yes.
She didn't even do it as a paid job. She got nothing out of that.
Mm,
And I helped them with the product strategy for their MVP. But she got nothing out of
wow.
it because I went to go meet her for a coffee, or yeah, I met her for a coffee. She's like, "Ah, there's this guy you should meet because I think you'll get along."
Mm.
And like and so that was 6 years ago. I refer her to absolutely everyone, and I have done for the last 6 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
Yeah,
that's the sort of like that's what you got to be looking for, and
yeah.
it's tricky. It takes time, man.
Yeah, and I love your advice about, like, stop making it difficult for people to find information. The way I like to interpret that is stop making it difficult for people to give you money. Like, don't
Well,
ever
yeah, no,
hinder
exactly.
yeah, don't ever hinder someone's ability to give you money and more money, right? Don't ever
Yeah,
turn
that's
down
it.
the opportunity to provide, right? How do you know if you don't, and that's a whole different conversation on pricing for another time. But I
Yeah, I think
wanna
Edward,
spend
your chat with Edward covered that quite well. I was super surprised to hear that like one of his options is PayPal. I was like,
Yeah, I
I know,
was too. I was
yeah,
like, I have never thought about that.
no, me
Like,
neither.
and
Like, maybe the US is different, but like here, it's just here's an invoice. Please pay the invoice.
yeah, I
Like,
think that perhaps is a European-esque form of doing things, but PayPal is so global and far-reaching. I just would have never he said not only is it an option, he said it's the one that clients prefer,
yeah,
which I thought
no,
was interesting. I was like, "What?" And then he was like, "Yeah, I just eat the service cost," which is like 3%. It's the same thing if you were gonna use Stripe or something.
yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
super curious where that came from. I guess I'll look into that, but,
Yeah,
um, yeah, I wanna spend the last little bit of time talking about your coming back to full-time work. You
yeah,
jumped out the window, but just to climb into another one. So
I did.
you were free for a little bit, and then,
I was free for a
you
bit.
know,
I
it's a
was, I was,
story very similar to mine. I mean, came out of college freelance,
yeah,
joined a place, left, did some more freelance, found this. I was actually doing Kittl freelance. It wasn't called Kittl, but it is now. And then got full time, because the stars aligned and things are great. And so I want to know what the journey was for your decision making and reasoning for jumping back into a full time position.
so I mean, the ultimate reason was I had a daughter. So
Mhm.
my daughter is now 4 years old, and her being born was the ultimate reason for going back to stability. But
Okay.
the part that led up to that was I got this new client who was this like startup who was building a really interesting product in sort of WebGL space. They were building like a drag and drop web page builder that allowed you to create WebGL websites that exist
And
in
can
this
you
like,
explain what the GL means there?
well, it's basically web-based 3D. So 3D in the
3D.
browser.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
So
Yeah,
web-based 3D. So WebGL is just the framework that allows you to have 3D in the browser.
understood.
And so you could create 3D websites through a drag and drop, super, super simple no code builder. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
they were, again, this was somebody who was looking for designers because they were looking for people to create these websites to use as a showcase for what the platform was capable of.
Ah,
They
right.
approached me to do that. I said, no, thanks. Like, I don't want to just like make websites for your
Yeah,
portfolio.
for your
But
portfolio,
then,
yeah.
yeah, but then I ended up talking to their CTO, who's like, actually, we need someone to like head up the UX effort and the sort of like the product strategy effort um, for the builder. So for the actual like interface of the builder that lets you do this, and then like things going forward. So I was like, okay, cool, that sounds more interesting. I took a contract work with them, and I was doing like they had me on retainer for like 2 days worth of time per week, right? And then I was working on other
Oh,
clients
okay.
the other
Yeah.
other parts of the week, yeah. And then that went to 3, and then they're like, okay, that went to 4 because they like had a lot of VC money pressure, right? So they're like, we need more, 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 more. And eventually the CTO just called me. It was like, look, stop messing around. You're already doing 4 days a week. Don't you just want like a full-time job? And
Mm,
it was at this point that I was like, yeah, Haley, my daughter, she's gonna be born in like a couple of months. I was like, cool, I'll take it. And I spent 3 years with them, and super interesting, super challenging problem trying to like translate designing in the Z depth to a very simple 2D UI, which was drag and drop.
mm,
Really, really interesting.
yeah.
And then towards the end of the 3 years, the founder of Metro Retro, who is an old friend of mine, and we worked together many years ago, he contacted me saying, like, we're expanding the team and we need someone to look after product and brand. Like,
Mm,
are you available? And so I'd originally worked with Metro Retro in 2019 when they went from being like a hackathon idea to like, no, we're going to build this as a full on product and launch it as a full on product. So they needed like their brand development, they needed their UX strategy, and they needed their UI design. And I spent like on and off about a year doing jobs for him. So it's like, okay, I've got the next batch of work, do that, blah, 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 disappear for like a month, come back again. We need this. And then they'd grown to the position where they could grow their team. And so he contacted me, asked me if I wanted to come back on board. And it was a project that I really enjoyed working on. And I really believed in the product. So I was like, yeah, definitely. And I've been there now full time since April last year.
wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's good. Like I've like, I think the whole jumping out the window, running down the street thing was because I hadn't quite found something that I was super passionate about.
Yeah.
And then like finding something where you really click with the team, where you really click with the product, the thing that you're working on, uh, and you kind of want to take it all the way and see where it goes. And
Yeah.
like every day when you sort of turn on your computer and you start working on the next thing, you're having a good time. And it's
Mm,
like that's when it's worth it for me. And that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like where I've ended up now. And it's great. It's like it's hard work, but it's also really fun work. And you're building a product that people like. People love it. We get a lot of positive feedback on it. Every customer that I've spoken to just really enjoys the experience of using it. So it's all just like all lovely fuzzy feelings until it's
Yeah.
you've got crazy deadlines. But you know what I
Until you
mean.
have crazy deadline. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Until
That's
you're
amazing.
making a sales deck at like 2 a.m. on a Sunday night, so that sort of thing.
Right. Well, I think that's a great place to land the plane. I think that's really nice to have seen kind of the whole ins and outs of the journey and where you started learning things. And I love the advice about needing to be challenged. I think that you should always be looking for something that you need to learn more or new. You haven't learned it yet.
Yeah.
And as per usual, I always give the last minute or so to our guests to talk about anything that's upcoming, anything you want to direct them towards, anywhere maybe they could find out more. Is there anything like that that you want to share to direct our viewers to if they want, any more tips or information or just something cool, like anything you have free reign to mention it.
Really cool. I don't know, there's so many resources now. I think, uh, if I wanted to do a little bit of self-promotion, I would
Go
say,
for it.
please go if you're interested in, like, a really fun collaboration tool, go check out Metro Retro. You can try it the full features for 30 days for free. There's no card or anything to sign up. Just go in, give it a bash. It's metroretro.io.
Okay.
We it started off as like a product for software development teams, but now it's just expanded into sort of any team that wants to collaborate online. So go check it out. Let me know what you think of my illustrations and the templates. um, if I was to give you some other resources to go look at, I'm just looking over at my bookshelf because
Oh,
there's a
right. Yeah.
couple of decent books on there. I would say take a look at Creativity Inc. by
Okay.
Ed Catmull, the guy behind Pixar. It's a very good read. And then there's another one on UX, which is called The Laws of Simplicity. Two really good books if you're interested in just creative exploration, definitely for Creativity Inc. and how Pixar turned into like the beast that it is today. Just
Mm,
out of like sheer joy and exploration, and not stopping from being curious about things.
Yeah.
And the Laws of Simplicity is a tiny, tiny book, like really, really small book, but a lot of valuable lessons there about like pulling away the clutter. This is probably more for people who want to get into UX.
Okay.
How to
Got it.
narrow down a concept to the actual bare minimum, and start over again from that point. It's like
Perfect.
it's a great way to get yourself to think more critically about the work that you're doing.
Amazing. Well, we'll make sure all of that is linked down below as well as the
I'll
Metro
send you the
retro.
actual links.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah. As usual, thank you all so much for watching and listening, wherever that might be, on YouTube or Spotify. Steve, thanks so much for taking the time. This was
No worries,
a
man.
really great conversation. I'm excited to see what the comments are like, and it makes me, it reminds me to let you know and tell you if there's a question you have where Steve and I were discussing something and you're not sure what it meant or you want to dive deeper, comment down below. Otherwise, we don't really know what we need to talk about further.
Sure.
So if you could let us know if you have any extra questions, or even if you have your own advice, feel free to share that as well. We'd love to read it. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel here or follow us on Spotify. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Cheers.